Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Imagine asking your data a question in plain English and then getting back either SQL queries or KQL queries plus the context-aware answers in seconds. Well, that's the power of Fabric data agents. In this video, I'll show you how you can set up one. We'll look at the prerequisites, we'll look at the configuration that is required to set up the data agent in your project, and we'll also talk about the use cases. We'll pick one use case, for example, air quality real-time analytics, and then start asking some business questions to the data that we have already built in our project to see how the data agent processes your questions and then get back in seconds. Okay, so let's get started. So let us quickly look at the problem statement and solution, and then we will dive into the Microsoft documentation to look at the prerequisites that are required that you need to keep in mind. I'll also show you in Fabric admin portal what are the different prerequisites that you need to put a tick in a checkbox, and then go ahead and create your data agent in your workspace. Okay, so the problem statement. So what's the problem here? Why Microsoft came up with Fabric data agents in first place? So if you take any real world analytics projects, see, business users and analysts often struggle to ask questions in plain English, right, and get answers directly from their data models, and there is always complexity involved in it. So they must either depend on technical teams to write some SQL, KQL queries on top of the data and then get some answers for you, or you probably need to build a business report and dashboards to derive some insights yourself out of your data. Okay, as I mentioned, rely on pre-built dashboards that don't cover ad hoc questions at all, right? So those are like the challenges or the problem that we are facing in current situation. So what happens is this creates delays and it limits the self-service. So as a business user, if I want to make sense of my data very quickly, get some questions answered, there'll be a lot of delay, and it actually limits the self-service for business users and reduces the overall value of the unified data platform. Okay, so that's where Microsoft came up with this solution, which is Microsoft Fabric data agents, which is currently in public preview. So it enables you to ask question in conversational language, in plain English. So it enables a natural bridge between the business questions and the underlying data tables. You can quickly pick your data tables from your different sources, and then you can right away ask questions on top of your data and get your questions answered, okay, in seconds. So maybe in this demo that I'm going to show you, we will probably pick a project that we already worked on, which is air quality real-time analytics, and we can ask some business questions in natural language, like what was the average, let's say the pollutant PM 2.5 in a particular location in Mexico during August 2025, and I'm going to show this get some answers with this kind of questions and see how the agent works, and then produces the required query and steps for us to look into it to arrive at a solution. And the agent automatically generates the right SQL, KQL, and applies the best practices as well, and returns the results with the context for you. Okay, and there are some limitations with respect to kind of getting the questions answered. Right now, I think only you can get the questions answered in plain English. Other languages are not supported at the moment. Probably that could be available probably when it becomes GA, right? We will also talk about some of the limitations in public preview. So at the time of recording, it is in public preview. Okay, so this reduces the dependency on the technical team, speeds up the decision making, and democratizes the data access across the entire organization. Okay, that's the whole idea, to democratize the data access and ask the business questions and get the answers right away, okay, without waiting for technical teams and without waiting for pre-built reports and dashboards as well. And I think, as I mentioned, we are going to look at the demo. I'll show you how we can ask some questions in the air quality analytics project that we already built, and we can ask some trend level questions or compliance questions directly on the fact and dimension tables that we have that's residing in the event house, and see how the agent responds, okay, on top of the questions. So we'll let the agent generate the queries on the fly and get answers with plain English summaries and actionable insights. So that's the solution. So we will break it down like the prerequisites, how you can set up one, and then we'll look at the actual demo to see how we can work with data agents and how we can set up instructions, give them some examples to train, and then probably fine tune it further. Okay, so here I'm in Fabric portal. So let us look into the prerequisites first. Okay, the first things first, and then we'll also show you what are the different prerequisites that you need to keep in mind. Otherwise, I think if you miss any one of the setting, then you may not be able to create the data agent in your workspace. Okay, so the first thing to keep in mind is your paid capacity. So you cannot create your data agent with trial capacity. You should have a paid F2 or higher Fabric capacity, or probably a premium capacity P1 or higher with the Microsoft Fabric enabled. Okay, so then I think you're good to go to look at for further settings. Okay, so that's the first thing which you need to keep in mind, and you make sure. So in my case, for this project that I already built, air quality real-time analytics, so let me make sure under the license information I have tagged my paid capacity. So here in license information, I'm making sure the license tagged is my Fabric capacity, which is Datavion capacity, F2 SKU in Central India. So that's the first thing which I need to make sure. Okay, the workspace is attached to a paid capacity F2 or higher for me to plan to create a data agent further. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second step is Fabric data agent tenant level settings enabled. I think there are a lot of settings that we need to take care in this particular. If you just click on this, it will take you to another link. I'm going to share these links in the description so that you can check yourself and make sure whether you're meeting all of the prerequisites. Okay, that's very important. So I think there's a separate documentation for you to enable all of the required settings at the tenant level to activate the Fabric data agent. So what are those? Let's quickly look into it one by one. Okay, so under the admin portal, so there are quite a lot of things which you need to make sure, which is enabling the Copilot and Azure OpenAI tenant switch. So let me show you one by one. Okay, so let me get into the admin portal. So let me click on admin portal. Under tenant settings, there are quite a lot of settings that you can, but you can always filter by keyword. So let me search for Copilot, and you should see some settings related to Copilot and Azure OpenAI servers, right? So make sure there are quite a few things that gets enabled for this, which is so you can see there are screenshots in the documentation. Under tenant, users can use Copilot and other features. That's the setting that you need to make sure it's enabled at the organizational level or for a specific security group. So that you can use the Copilot and other features powered by Azure OpenAI. Okay, that's the setting that you need to make sure, which is enabled at the organizational level. And the second thing is data sent to Azure OpenAI can be processed outside your capacities, geographic region, compliance boundary, and national cloud instance. But there are some settings that you need to also make sure which are enabled to kind of try and create your data agent and ask questions around your data, right? So let us look into those as well. There are a few settings around that. Let me minimize this. So you can see the third setting, which is data sent to Azure OpenAI can be processed outside your capacities geographic region. That should also be enabled. As you can see, it's already enabled. I have enabled it. Okay, make sure that is enabled. And there is another option, which is the third option. Again, so data sent to Azure OpenAI can be stored outside your region as well. So a couple of things. One, the data sent to Azure OpenAI can be processed outside your capacity region, and then it can also be stored. So that is also enabled for me. Okay, so make sure these three settings under Copilot and Azure OpenAI servers are enabled as a prerequisite. Okay, so that is under this particular category that you can say. And what are the settings that you need to enable? Then you need to enable the Fabric data agent tenant settings actually. Okay, so what are those? Probably you can see the keyword is also given in the image, right? So you can simply type in data agent in the admin portal. So let me remove Copilot in the keyword and say data agent. And I think under Microsoft Fabric, there is a generic setting, which is users can create and share data agent item types. Okay, that should also be enabled at the organizational level, or if you're planning for a specific security groups, make sure that is also enabled. Okay, I think I'm not sure. I think default it is disabled at the tenant level. So you need to be aware, you need to enable this when you're planning to create a data agent in your workspace. Okay, so we looked at, I think, 4 settings, 3 settings under Copilot and Azure OpenAI related settings, and the 4th setting is this. You tell the Fabric, okay, users can create and share the data agent item types, which is in preview at the moment. Okay, so there are 4 different things that you need to make sure. Okay, otherwise I think you can ignore this. This is related to integration via XML endpoints that I'm not going to cover, but we looked at 4 different settings that you need to make sure to enable at the admin portal tenant level settings. Okay, that's the second thing you need to keep in mind. And I think the third thing is Copilot tenants, which is also enabled. I think you can navigate to that. Again, there is a setting related to, I think this is also under, I think it's probably the 4th setting, that we already looked at. If you type in Copilot, so we looked at these. I think this is the one, users can access standalone. Let me show you that. Let me close this. So users can use Copilot and other features powered by Azure OpenAI. I think that is something you also need to make sure you enable it. Okay, I think that we already looked at, right? So make sure under Copilot and Azure OpenAI there are quite a lot of settings which you need to make sure that are enabled, around users accessing it and the data being sent outside your capacities region, whether it can be stored or processed. So all of those settings are something you need to keep in mind and activate it before you even plan to create your data agent. Okay, so I think those are the prerequisites, and apart from that, I think again this is also something we turned on, I guess, standalone Copilot experience. I think there is a setting here, users can access standalone Copilot in Power BI, and that is also enabled. So which is like, I think, close to 1, 2, 3, 4 settings. I think you need to make sure you enable under Copilot and Azure OpenAI service. Okay, 1, 2, first 3, and then the 4th setting. Okay, so 4 different settings that needs to be enabled at the organizational level for you to be ready for data agent setup. Okay, and I think cross geo processing for AI, cross geo storing, I think we already enabled it. Okay, so I think that's all I did. And also make sure at least one of these, for you to create a data agent, you need to make sure you have the required data first of all, right? So in your items, probably lakehouse or warehouse or one or more Power BI semantic models or KQL database, you should have the right data first for you to kind of reason over your data. So that's one of the prerequisite. Otherwise, there's no point of creating data agent and ask questions at all. Okay, and I think this is something also enabled in case if you're leveraging XML endpoints. There's a separate setting that we looked at, right? So under data agent. So if I go back again, okay, so I think it's under Copilot. So you can just have a look at the last prerequisite as well. How do you navigate to it? And I think again it's under Copilot and Azure OpenAI servers, I guess. Okay, I think these are the settings that you need to make sure. So I think the last one, which is allowing XML endpoints, right? So that's something you need to enable in case if you if you want your data agent can query and manage your Power BI semantic models, you need to enable this. Okay, the last setting. Okay, so you can go through this. I'll share the documentation in the description to be aware of what are the different settings at the admin, at the tenant level that you need to enable before you even hit on create Fabric agent. Okay, data agent. Okay, so once I have all these settings in place, you make sure your capacity and different tenant level settings that are enabled, then I think you're good to go. So you get your workspace. Let us have a quick demo. So let me open my air quality real-time analytics workspace. So I have all the settings in place already. You can go ahead and click on new item and then all items, search for data agent. You can see it's coming up. It's a separate item under analyze and train your data. So data agent preview, you can click on it and then it will ask you to name the data agents and just give a name, AQ agent test or something like that, some meaningful name, and then hit on create. So if any of your setting if you're not meeting any of the prerequisite, then you may not be able to go ahead and create your data agent. You will get some error for sure, because I faced it. at the time of creation, because some of the settings I missed it. Then I had to go through the documentation in detail to make sure all of the tenant level settings are enabled for me to create data agent. So here you can see we are able to create the data agent and it's up and running. Okay. So the first thing which you need to do once you have the data agent created is to bring your data sources. So it could be Lakehouse, it could be Warehouse, or it could be Event House, KQL database, whatever it is, or semantic models. Just bring in the data sources and then start selecting the required tables or the required data for you to reason over your data. Okay, so you can click on data source and then you can it will take you to OneLake catalog where you can see all of the data that resides in your OneLake for you to choose and then reason over your data. Okay, so here in my case I'm going to bring in my open air quality event house to ask some business questions and then reason over it. Okay, so I'll click on add, so it will validate the data source and then try to add it in the explorer here. Okay, so let's get it added. So you can see it's already added, right? So now I can see the different tables, which is residing already in my event house table, and it's already curated as a part of end-to-end project that I already built. So I think I can pick up some dimensions, let's say dim location, then the fact sensor daily fact table, and then this is my raw table for one of the location in New Mexico, which is Del Norte. Okay, so once I pick, let's say I pick the dimension fact table and then the raw table. Okay, so we have already added, as you can see, the required tables from my open air quality event house, as you can see here. So you can start asking some questions right away. So let me put some questions. Okay, so I've already built this agent. Let me pull some questions. Let's say probably I'm going to the questions are already answered, but let me pick those questions and we'll come to AQ agent test. And this is the first question that I'm going to ask, and it's also kind of showing you some sample questions and what are the historical trends across all of my data and some questions. Okay, so you can use that or you can type your own question, okay, right away. So let me go ahead and paste this. So I'm asking the agent to show me different pollutant types that are ingested into my system, analytics system, right? So let me ask this question and click on enter, and it will try to analyze the data source based on the tables that you have chosen added here, and then it will try to produce some answer for you. Okay, so here you can see it started processing the open air quality event house custo DB, and there you go, within seconds you're getting some answers like the following pollutant types have been ingested in the database, like nitrogen dioxide, NO2, sulfur dioxide, PM2.5, particulate matter, PM10, ozone. There are a lot of data that we have in this specific system, so it brings in all of those. And the good thing is you can also see here the step completed here, right? So how it arrived at this solution. So that's something you can also look at. So if I just scroll down quickly by minimizing this, so it says it analyzed the custo DB, and then you can also look at the query that it tried to generate. So you can see here it wrote a simple KQL on top of the fact sensor daily. As you can see here, I have chosen already my fact table and my dimension. So it's picking up the fact table, the daily sensor fact table, and then it's trying to summarize the pollutant types. It's making a list of different pollutants that are available in the database, right? And it just bring the response to you in plain English. Okay, so that's the beauty of Fabric data agents, you can see. And probably apart from that, I think the two things you also need to keep in mind, which is the AA instructions and example queries. Okay, so in case if you need to fine-tune your Fabric data agents, you can always provide some AA instructions, right? So it opens up a dialog here, so you can guide the data agent to the best data sources for different types of questions by writing a detailed system prompt. I think similar to ChatGPT experience, you can tell ChatGPT, provide some instructions and customize it, right? So in the same way, Fabric data agent as well, you can provide some AA instructions, and then you can kind of fine tune and then prepare your data agent to answer some context aware questions for you. Okay, let me close this. And also, as I mentioned, the example queries here on top, so you can provide some example queries as well. Right now nothing is added, but you can provide some example KQL queries. Here in our case it's the event house that we're looking at, the KQL database for real-time analytics. So you can always try and provide some sample or example KQL queries, that you can add, so that it look at that queries, and then it will try to probably optimize itself when it tries to answer your business questions. Okay, so let us ask a few more questions. So I have these questions. Let me probably ask this question. Okay, let me probably this one. Okay, so I'm going to ask, so okay, I'm asking what was the average PM 2.5 pollutant level, okay, reading for this specific station in New Mexico during the last full month, or we can say specific probably during the month of let's say August, last month, okay, 2025. Let's see what happens. It's trying to analyze the data sources, and I think you should get the response within few seconds. Okay, once it analyzes, it will, as you can see here, it's analyzing the CustoDB, and you got the response. It took around 10 seconds to produce that response. It says the average PM 2.5 reading for the Del Norte station during the month of August was approximately 6.5. So which is great. I think we can also ask some follow-up questions like whether it meets the WHO standard or not, or is it a hazardous level, or those kind of questions you can always ask, right? And you can again look at the step completed, so how it arrived at this particular response for my question. Let me expand this, and you can see the KQL code. It built this KQL code on top of ActSensor Daily again, where the location name has Del Norte and the pollutant name has PM 2.5, and then it produced put some filters around the event date between those timeline, right? So for the August month, and it tries to summarize the PM 2.5 for you. That's it, as simple as that. Okay, and let me ask one more question. Let's say probably let me copy that, which I already have here. So I think this is a good question to the agent. So I wanted to ask, do one thing, compare the average air quality levels, probably average PM 2.5, because I'm looking at PM 2.5. We do have other pollutant as well, you can definitely ask, but I'm focusing on PM 2.5, which is very, if it reaches the limit, it's very hazardous. It's not good for health. It enters the lungs, and then you will it enters your blood, and then you will have some health complications, right? So I wanted to closely look at PM 2.5 AQA levels, and I'm asking questions like do a comparison between weekdays and weekends in the August month, and tell me how the levels are between weekdays and weekends, so that I can have a good comparison between the weekdays and weekends. We might expect the levels could be higher during weekends. Why? Because people are on weekends, they are on holidays, and they have a weekend off, and they may probably travel outside, and probably that will add up to the pollution, you can say, and affect the air quality, right? So that's something we can probably make some kind of guess probably on the levels that it's going to bring. But let's see what happens for that particular station. I'm going to ask for a particular month, tell me the average air quality level for PM 2.5 between weekdays and weekends. So it came up with the answer, and it says during August at the Del Norte station in New Mexico, the average PM 2.5 air quality on weekdays was about 6.69, and on the weekends was higher at about 7.2. and I think that makes sense, right? So if you take any location, I think when you do such kind of comparison, I think weekends probably on the higher side, right? So compared to the weekdays, because people are on work and they may not come out, probably if they're using the electric vehicles, that's okay, but otherwise it's not fully electric vehicles, right? So probably some of the vehicles may add up to the air pollution, and probably there will be a slight increase in the air quality levels, because people are traveling a lot during weekends. And that makes sense. Even with the data what we have, I can derive some insights for that particular PM2.5 air quality index for a particular location for a particular month. So PM2.5 levels were slightly elevated. It says slightly elevated on weekends compared to weekdays. And you can see some steps how it arrived at this response. See, it generated this nice KQL query for us. We didn't even write a single line of code, right? So data agent did all of the work for me, and then provided a beautiful nice response within seconds. And for this question it took around 8 seconds, as you can see here, right? So its response time is just 8 seconds, as you can see. So it's very quick at the moment, and probably Microsoft is working on to fine-tune it. Probably when it becomes GA, it could be much faster, I believe. Okay, so you can see the query is nicely generated automatically on top of fact sensor daily, where location name, pollutant name, and then the filters on event date for that particular month. And it tries to extend something, it's adding up a column, okay, on the fly, day of the week with the day of week function on top of event date. And then we are trying to determine if it's a weekend or not by deriving another column is weekend. If the day of week is equal 6 or 0, then it's a weekend, otherwise weekday, okay, with the if condition. And with those two columns, we are trying to summarize the average PM2.5 average of the value which we have in the fact table by the weekend, okay, so whether it is weekend or not. Okay, so that gives us you can see the query output is also available for this particular KQL query that it generated automatically. So is weekend, for weekday this is the average PM2.5 value, and for the weekend this is the average PM2.5 value, which is 7.2. okay, so it's really great to see agent takes care of generating the query for you and then do the processing, and then based on the output it also provided an insightful response as well. Okay, great. I think that's really cool. We have seen the data agent in action on top of our event house data for the real-time analytics use case on air quality, and we asked some questions, business related questions, and then you can see it in action how beautifully it's producing the response by generating the KQL queries automatically. Okay, so now I think let us move on to see what are the different limitations at the moment in public preview. Okay, so let me take you through the limitations real quickly. I think at the moment you can see the agent only generates SQL, KQL, DAX read queries. It doesn't generate any queries that you can create, update, or delete your data. You cannot do any manipulation around your data. It's just the read only queries that you can execute. It generates and then produces the response for you. Okay, that's one of the limitations that you need to keep in mind. And the second thing is it doesn't support unstructured data. Okay, so right now only it supports structured data sources. Maybe when it becomes GA, Microsoft provide that capability to use your Fabric data agent around the unstructured data sources as well. Okay, so it includes PDF, docx, or text files, for example. And the third thing is the data agent doesn't currently support non-English languages, as we highlighted during the start of this video. It's only you can ask the questions in plain English at the moment. Okay, and you can't change the LLM that the Fabric data agent uses as well. You cannot have any control over it. So those are the limitations at the moment. Maybe it could be lifted when it becomes GA, so watch out for at the time of GA there could be some lifting in this. Okay, and I think also I wanted to quickly talk about the differences between you might have some questions around why I need to use Fabric data agent and what is the use of Copilot, right? So we already have a Copilot. Why Fabric data agent? So I think there are some differences Microsoft highlighted here that you can see here. So what are those? So you can see for both of these, using generative AI LLMs to process your questions and then reason over your data. But the key thing to remember is Fabric data agents are quite configurable. Okay, so it is quite customizable as well, highly customizable. So as I mentioned, you can provide custom instructions to it. You can add some sample queries to fine tune it and then train it and then reason over your data. That you cannot do with Fabric Copilots. On the other hand, it is a pre-configured environment. It doesn't offer you that level of customization. Okay, that's the key thing which you need to keep in mind, which is with respect to the configuration flexibility, I would say. And the scope and use cases for Copilots, generally you can use Copilots to assist with tasks like generating the queries or generating the notebook code or warehouse queries or whatever it may be, right? So that's something you can use it. On the other side, Fabric data agents, in contrast, they are standalone items or artifacts, right? So you can use it for broader use cases. You can integrate it with the external systems like Copilot Studio, AI Foundry, Microsoft Teams, and other tools outside of Fabric as well. Okay. So those are the key things you need to keep in mind with respect to limitations and then the differences when it compared to when we compare it to Copilot as well. Okay, and that's a wrap for this video. This is just an introduction video for the Fabric data agents, and in the upcoming episodes we'll dive into the data agent security at the enterprise level and customization, and then in another episode we'll look at how you can use data agent with different or multiple data sources. How you can use data agent with different sources. Here we have just connected or tagged only one sources and then started asking questions. How you can bring in multiple sources and then use your data agent. So that's something we will look into it in the upcoming episodes. And for this episode, I think that's it. A quick summary. So we looked at we introduced you to Fabric data agents and what it is, how it is different from Copilot, what are the different prerequisites that you need to meet, like sourcing your capacity and different tenant level settings that you need to enable, and then start creating your data agent inside your workspace without any issues, and bring in your data source and then start asking your questions directly on top of your data in plain English and get the answers with these steps also applied, right, automatically. And we talked about applying AA instructions and example queries to fine tune your data agent further, and then make it more context aware, you can say, right? So thank you for watching, and that's a wrap for this video. And in the upcoming episodes, as I mentioned, please look out for upcoming episodes in the applied learning series. So this video is part of the applied learning series on YouTube, so wherein we dive deep into the advanced concepts and then also have some hands-on, because that's the key idea, to get some hands-on on the advanced concepts and see how the actual feature works inside Fabric. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.